So what's up, y'alls? Um, so I'm gonna have y'all enjoy my backyard scenery right now. Um, I got like four ideas last night that of just stuff that I remembered. Um, which I don't know. Over the years, I think God was like reminding me of some stuff. Because there's one thing that's like I thought of a long, long time ago, and I don't know. I kind of was working on it. I don't know if I ever got it polished. I really felt like I got some real clarity on it. Um, but because it didn't feel like like sometimes it's like you get a revelation and it's like fully formed and it's like, oh yeah, and it changes your whatever. And I was trying to make something like that. And I mean, it did sort of come to me, but it didn't like, I don't know if it really uh, solved it for me, if that makes any sense. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. So I guess a long time ago, I was trying to understand grace, and and maybe it's just that it doesn't apply to grace, but it applies to something spiritual that I don't know where it goes yet. But I was thinking about like I think I was watching something about like a kid who it was like a kid who was dying, and what's that thing where they do Make a Wish? It's like the Make a Wish Foundation, and they do something for a kid who's like terminal. And I guess this kid like wanted to be Batman or whatever. And so they like, I don't know, there was like a parade and stuff. Like, I don't know what the parade had to do with anything, but like he got to like be Batman in the parade. And like literally there was like hundreds of people participated in this. And, um, you know, it was sweet. And I remember like thinking about that, and I was like, you know what? That there's something to this, like this thing that we're doing, that exercise, that application, because you have to explain how it happens because the kid isn't Batman. Do you know what I mean? So what is that? Like, what are we doing? And I think uh, it was grace, because it was like it's not faith. It's not like we believe that he's Batman. It's not like uh, we know that he's not, but we're doing something for him. I mean, all that energy, you have to explain what all of that energy is going into. We don't hope that he's Batman. It's not hope. So it's got to be grace, which is giving, what's it called? Unmerited favor. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, I think me and God were having like a back and forth, because it was just like, well, what if the kid got up there and really thought he was Batman and was like, or not even so much, because you want the kid to participate. You want the kid to you don't want the kid to be like, guys, none of this is real. Like, I'm not Batman. I'm a kid dressed up in a costume. Like, so in my mind, that sort of was like, I don't know if the equivalent of that is unbelief, but it's like, if God is giving you the grace for something, like if you got the whole town that done came out and they're in the crowd of the parade coming down, like, you better put on your Batman act. Like, don't just shrink back and be like, no, I'm not really Batman. So, but we can trust children to like do their part in something like that, because children have that, say it with me, childlike faith. But I don't know that the kid really believed like, oh my gosh, these people are all here. Like, I must actually be Batman. I like it, even if he did, it would be fine. It's really strange, because it's like the adults will really push it and try to make it be true. And the kids, we want the kids to sort of believe what we're saying, even when you're trying to convince a child, like, something, it's like, oh, the tooth fairy is right outside the door. And the kid will be like, no, they're not. That's not real. And you're like, uh-huh, he's right there. And like, you can see that glimmer of doubt that comes by them believing what you say, And it's like, that's really like some dangerous stuff that you're doing there. But it's just like, I remember someone telling a story about how they were little, and their parents tried to get them to believe in Santa Claus or whatever, um and it was just like this elaborate story that she remembered, where it was like Santa Claus was supposed to bring her this gift, and then the parents went outside and looked, and like it was in a bush, like the thing that she wanted the most was in this bush, and she just, it just like shot her faith in Santa Claus up like way whatever. It's like they did all of this stuff. So I think that humans, they don't know what this is. If you're not a believer, you don't know why you want to preserve this in children and why you want to see it. So they put it on Santa Claus and all of these other things that seem harmless, but and it's not even so much that fruit can't come from that, but ultimately what you're doing is trying to tap into that. I don't know. I remember being a kid too. I remember one time my mom told me that I was like 5 or something, and I took like, I want to say it was X-Lax for some reason. Like she gave me an X-Lax pill or something, and she was like, it makes your stomach turn. And in my 5-year-old mind, I was like, oh, like it's gonna make my stomach physically like turn in a circle. And so I remember like being in my room, like, oh, I think I can feel it. Like I feel my stomach turning, like, and I did, like, it's like, I remember it's really like a powerful thing. So I think there is something about faith that is powerful, and it's just that moment when you're a child where it is really like potent still. And I don't know. I remember being able to like make myself hear music, like doing stuff like just playing around and being silly. And it's the 80s and you don't have any computers. So you're just doing weird stuff. But so yeah, back to this Batman kid. So it's a fine line because you don't want the kid to be like, I'm not Batman, this is embarrassing. Like that's not going to give anybody any joy to have the kid be a realist at that moment. But at the same time, you don't want the kid to go full on and just be like trying to karate chop people, or just being like, you're a loser, I'm Batman. Like you don't want to abuse the grace and now be like a jerk and try to like treat people less than you because you're Batman. Like, so I think with that analogy, it was like God was showing me like what the goal is, or just how the things in the spirit are not that strange. Like, and there's an equivalent in our own world that we do all the time that we just take for granted. So, I think that ultimately there's just so much going on in the spirit realm and so much that we just cannot possibly understand in our current state. And God requires us to use faith for a lot of stuff. And we just have to go with it. And we just have to believe. And it's not like the knowledge can't come, but if you wait to understand it all before you do something, like you're just going to be sitting there. And I think we just underestimate how much is going on and how feeble our minds are to understand and comprehend it all. But there's something that comes with just doing it and experiencing it that helps us to understand at least enough to convince us to keep going in that direction. So that's basically all we need is enough evidence to keep us going in the right direction, because us having all the knowledge and understanding is just simply not possible. And then hopefully over your lifetime, there's a pattern that you can learn from and see. And I mean, that's essentially what the Bible is people who have looked back, because almost nothing in the Bible was written in the moment it was happening. So looking back, seeing the pattern, writing it down for other people to have that pattern so that they can see it in their own lives, because God never changes. And you'll be able to recognize when you see God in your life. But yeah, so I was thinking about that, and just I think it is grace, what grace means, because it does get a little confusing, where especially the way it's used nowadays, which is basically like uh, allowing people to just sin and be ridiculous and not say anything to them, and that's sort of considered grace. And no, it's the reason, the way that God has grace with you is that He, um, you're in a terribly uh, imperfect state, and you're just a mess. But God invites you over for tea. You got to act accordingly. You wouldn't. First of all, you can't turn it down. You can't say, "Oh well, I'm a mess. There's no way like that I can come over to your house for tea." It's like, if God is being gracious, take the flippin' invitation. So you take the invitation, but don't go, "Well, God, I'm a slob and God knows it." So you just wear your bathrobe. It's like, act like you know what's going on. Act like you would if this happened to you in any other context, you would show up all distinguished. And this is when God says, it's like, you do this for your human dignitaries and you're this and you're that. And then when it's me, you act like this. It's like God just wants to be treated the way that you would act in your life for whatever the human equivalent would be. But a lot of times, I heard this really great analogy on TikTok the other day. And it was talking about, he asked the Holy Spirit about, like, I don't remember what he asked about water, but it was just that, I don't know, I guess he was just saying why he compared himself to water, or, I don't know. But, the Holy Spirit was breaking down, which I totally believe, because it had all of the hallmarks of being incredibly simple and airtight and profound. But, he was saying that water it's not flashy, it's not bubbly, it's not sweet. Some might even say that it's bland. And there's um, all these other alternatives that you could be drinking. And but when you're thirsty, when you're really, really thirsty, and nothing else satisfies, you need water, and you drink water. And he said a lot of times, people only come to God when they just need. But then after they're done with that, they go back to their, drinking their whatevers, their chai lattes or whatever. Whatever drink that you feel like conveys the person you ought to be and your whatever. It's like, if you're just a regular can of beer guy, or, a Pepsi girl, or, kombucha or whatever, all of that stuff is still not water, which is what your body needs. So, um, yeah, people do that. They come to the water, and then he said most people don't come to God until they're dehydrated. And then they get water, and then they're not dehydrated anymore. And then a lot of people go back to whatever they're doing. But if they just kept drinking the water, they would never be dehydrated ever again. And it was so simple and true and real. And it was like, yeah, it's right there. Like, it's not even fancy or nothing. It's true. But then I also started thinking about the people who do drink water, and how the people who drink water regularly, and we're just talking in the natural, very, very on the high horse about it. And, walking around with their visible big gallon jugs of water, and to show just how health conscious they are, and um, how much adequate water they're getting. So this is a human problem. It's not a Christian problem. It's not a religious problem. This is just the nature of being sinful in our hearts and stuff. And that's just what we end up doing a lot of the times. So I think I'm going to leave that there, because I kind of had to fit in two other things, because I didn't really have much to say about that grace thing. Like I said, it's not like a done deal in my mind. So, but I do think there's something in it about, even though I don't really ascribe to the thing about balance and the moderation and all that, it's like either it's right or it's wrong. But I do think that we tend to either make a mistake on one side or the other, where we either, like the kid, will either be too embarrassed to accept the grace, or too self-conscious to walk in the grace and just be Batman for a day and have everybody cheer. It's like, listen, everybody's going along with it. You don't have to feel embarrassed. Or you go too hard and make it like, yeah, I made myself Batman. It's like, no, we all agreed to do this. Like, you didn't do anything. You are not actually Batman. You are a child in a costume. I made myself here, made it to my, like, all on my own. Like, I don't know. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that.